On a chilly morning, the cafe buzzed with the low hum of chatter and clinking cups. But in the corner, silence broke when a police officer made his move. A black woman, dressed neatly, sat quietly at a small table, her coffee untouched. The officer loomed over her, sneering, before tilting his cup and letting steaming liquid spill across her lap. Gasps filled the room, but she stayed still, her eyes steady, her lips pressed shut. The man thought he had humiliated her. What he didn't know was that this quiet woman had raised someone the whole city already feared. The woman's name was Evelyn Carter. She was the kind of person most people overlooked, not because she lacked presence, but because she chose silence as her weapon. A widow, a mother, and a former church singer, Evelyn carried herself with quiet dignity. Every morning she visited the same cafe, sitting at the same spot by the window, watching life move past the glass. To strangers, she was just another face. But her life had been far from ordinary. Years earlier, she had raised her son, Marcus Carter, in a neighborhood that the city had all but abandoned. Crime, drugs, and poverty swallowed block after block, but Evelyn refused to let her son become another statistic. She raised him with discipline and faith, keeping him away from the traps that claimed so many. Marcus grew into something the city couldn't ignore, a brilliant legal mind, a man who studied law with the fury of someone who had seen too much injustice. Now, he was one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in the state. But that morning, as Evelyn sat quietly with her coffee, no one in the cafe saw her connection to him. They saw only a black woman alone. And that was all it took for one officer to believe he could break her. The officer's name was Daniels, a veteran of the force, hardened by years of unchecked authority. He was known for his short temper and his quiet cruelty. To him, uniforms were power, and power meant control. Evelyn wasn't the first person he had humiliated, but she would become the one he would never forget. That morning, Daniels entered the cafe already brimming with irritation. A minor traffic stop had turned into an argument, and now he needed somewhere to dump his anger. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Evelyn. She wasn't loud, she wasn't defiant, she was simply there, existing in her quiet corner. And for men like Daniels, sometimes that was enough to provoke. He walked over, cup in hand, and with a smirk tipped it forward. The coffee splashed across Evelyn's lap, staining her dress, burning her skin. Gasps filled the room, but no one stepped in. Daniels expected outrage, tears, or fear. Instead, Evelyn looked up at him, her face calm, her eyes unblinking, as if she had been preparing for this very moment her entire life. Her silence unsettled him more than shouting ever could. He muttered something under his breath and walked out, leaving whispers behind him. The cafe staff hurried to clean up, offering apologies Evelyn did not ask for. She simply stood, dabbed at her dress, and left quietly, as if nothing had happened. But word traveled fast. The cafe had cameras, witnesses talked, and within hours, someone recognized Evelyn Carter not just as a woman humiliated, but as the mother of Marcus Carter, the attorney who had spent years fighting cases against police misconduct. By evening, the story had spread across the city. Evelyn hadn't spoken a word, but her silence had ignited a storm. The next morning, the cafe was crowded. Reporters, activists, students, and everyday people gathered waiting for something, anything. Evelyn did not appear, but Marcus did. He stood outside the cafe, surrounded by cameras, his presence commanding attention. He didn't shout, he didn't rage. Instead, his voice was steady, sharp, and cutting. He spoke of his mother's dignity, of her lifelong sacrifices, of her silence that had always been louder than hate.
He described the humiliation she endured, not as an isolated event, but as a symptom of something much larger, a system that allowed officers like Daniels to act with impunity. Daniels, meanwhile, faced a whirlwind he hadn't expected. The department tried to shield him, but the video left little room for denial. For years, his actions had gone unchecked. But now the victim wasn't just a nobody. She was Evelyn Carter, the woman who raised Marcus Carter. The press tore into the story. Lawsuits were filed. The cafe released the footage. Every corner of the city buzzed with Evelyn's name, though she herself never gave a single interview. Her silence, once overlooked, became the most powerful statement of all. Daniel sat in forced suspension, watching his name dragged through the headlines. For the first time, the man who had humiliated countless others found himself humiliated in return. His downfall set in motion, not by shouting, but by the quiet resilience of a woman he had underestimated. In the weeks that followed, something shifted. For many, Evelyn Carter became a symbol, not of anger, not of retaliation, but of strength in quiet resistance. Her story was told in classrooms, churches, and community centers. Mothers pointed to her as an example of dignity in the face of cruelty. Marcus continued his legal fight, but now with an even deeper fire. He spoke often of his mother's silence, reminding the world that resistance doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers, waits, and endures until the right moment comes. Officer Daniels never returned to the force. His suspension turned permanent after further investigations uncovered years of complaints buried in paperwork. For once, accountability found its way into the cracks of the system. And Evelyn? She kept going to the same cafe, to the same table, with the same quiet grace. People whispered when she walked in, some with admiration, some with shame, but she never changed. She didn't need to. Because in the end, the man who thought pouring coffee on her would break her only ended up spilling it on himself, his career, his reputation, his legacy. So ask yourself, how many Evelyn Carters live silently among us, carrying strength the world refuses to see? And how many Daniels believe their cruelty will never come back to haunt them? One day, silence speaks, and when it does, the whole world listens.